Welcome to another episode of Between Two Dots, brought to you by Intention Media, where we interview guests and try to discover how they're living an intentional life. On today's podcast, we're joined by Melissa From. Melissa is the CEO of the Calgary Food Bank, one of the region's largest food banks that runs over a $70 million annual budget. She joined as CEO in the height of the cost of living crisis in March of 2023. Her and her team had to double production in order to meet the challenge at hand. Melissa has over 2 decades of leadership and advocacy experience in the not-for-profit space. It was great to chat with Melissa. She's a real down-to-earth individual. She shared a whole wealth of knowledge and stories. I hope the listeners enjoyed this podcast because we certainly enjoyed recording it. Please join me in welcoming Melissa to the podcast.
Melissa, thank you so much for taking the podcast. Where are you taking the call from today?
I'm in the office at the Calgary Food Bank, watching the rain pour down right now, knowing that it probably means that we're struggling to serve clients and there's lineups of people out the door at the food bank across the street right now. So I muted my phone so I don't get the messages.
We really appreciate that. I mean, obviously this is an important conversation. You're doing important and phenomenal work. So really grateful for the opportunity to provide the platform in hearing your story.
Thank you.
I guess that's a good segue, but like how did your story begin? Are you born in Calgary? Did you come from elsewhere? Where did it all start?
I was born and raised in a rural farm and oil community in Manitoba, a little town of 3,000 people called Verdan, Manitoba, with a strong agricultural community and a strong oil sector. And so, I mean, it is appropriate that I would land here in Calgary, Canada's oil capital. But yeah, that's really where I grew up, where I spent 18 years, where I learned community and philanthropy and giving back and knowing and caring about others and all of those things that I think, especially when you grow up in a small rural community, you learn. The quintessential Canadian images of like a widower looking out her window and seeing the farmers taking off the field because her husband's passed and the community just rallies and takes care of one another. Like that was just literally my childhood. I saw that every day growing up. And from there, went to university in Saskatchewan and met my husband, got married, moved around a bit, spent some time south, actually lived in Phoenix for a couple of years and Toronto and London, Ontario, and then landed in Calgary 16 years ago. So this has been home for 16 years and it certainly feels like home now. And it's where I've raised my children and where I've really grown my career in the nonprofit sector. And I just love this city so much.
Amazing. Well, we're glad to have you. We did cover quite a bit of ground there, but I'm actually familiar with the hometowns somewhat because I remember just being young and getting into the industry. I started in investment banking focused on oil and gas. Okay. And I believe like one of the companies
Tundra.
Tundra or like maybe Fairborn Energy prior to that. Yeah.
Okay. Because Tundra is literally like that's where their head office is. Like they started in Verdan, which is like such a weird, like that's so weird that they're there. But yeah.
Yeah. Big company though. So
yeah, it's a big company. It's a big employer in that town, I'm sure. Yeah. It's always funny because I always feel like when I tell people where I'm from, they're like, oh, I get speeding tickets there. That's what I always hear from people. It's like, I don't know. We've got like a feisty RCMP depot in my hometown.
Come from a small town. You've been here for a while, and you mentioned that the work that you do now has been attributed to some of that growing up. Like, can we dive a little bit deeper into that as well too? Like you talked about the community coming together. Were your parents in farming or oil and gas, or like how are you influenced by the people that you're around?
Yeah, my folks both grew up on family farms, and we certainly had some involvement with those family farms as I grew up, but they themselves were not directly on the farm in my childhood. And so my dad actually was the manager at our local co-op grocery store. And my parents were both really involved with our local community church. And so I think the combination of that background and anyone who knows anything about co-op grocery stores is that, very similar to the food bank where we say we're by community for community, co-op grocery stores are community community owned, the members own the grocery store. And so I really grew up with my dad having this leadership role in the community where he was leading this organization in this local grocery store and really answering to everyone in the community in that responsibility, but then also serving the community in that, it was a town that certainly never had a food bank or anything like that, but there was definitely a lot of philanthropy and taking care of each other, whether it was through the grocery store or through the church or other initiatives like that. There was always, Christmas hampers and food hampers and pantries and things like that my family was involved in.
Do you have any siblings?
I do. I've got an older sister and a younger brother, and we've all made our way west. And so actually just in the last year and a half, my folks finally sold my childhood home and moved to Alberta as well. So we're all in Alberta. We're spread out a bit from Brooks all the way up to Edmonton, but it's nice to kind of all be at least in the same province. And yeah, it's good. It's good to all be kind of close together at least.
Awesome. What do they say? Do they say anything about middle children?
Oh, there's a few things.
Yeah. Because
Are you a
guys,
middle child? I feel like middle children have like a chip on our shoulders that like you would say that.
no, I'm the oldest. I think if he's the oldest as well.
Oh,
I think
interesting.
I think middle children, like they're the mediators, right? Because they have to kind of moderate between
I don't
younger
think
and
that's
older.
what
No?
my family would say.
Okay.
I think the narrative in my family is more like, am I allowed to swear, like shit disturbers? I think that would be what my family would say. Like those middle children, they're always looking for attention because they feel ignored.
hmm
And so they're always stirring up trouble and causing problems because they're just like, look at me, look at me. That would be, I think that would be what my family would say. I don't think they would say I was the peacemaker. I'll say that for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense though.
Yeah.
I mean, inevitably uh, you you give up the position of being the baby in the family when the younger one arrives on scene and everything like that. So
Yeah. And I mean, you do that like birth order analysis, but then also I feel like there's a gender dynamic. Like I have an older sister and a younger brother. So my brother is not only the youngest, but he's also the only boy. And so there's like a lot of this is well documented in my family. Like he's by far the parental favorite. And so then I think that makes it extra for me as the middle child. Like not only do I have to compensate for the fact that I've now been usurped in the like youngest child's place in the family, but then also it's the only boy. And so probably added to my need for attention.
um,
That's funny.
yeah,
Well, you sound very aware, at least. That's really good.
I'm owning it. I own it. It's who I
Yeah.
am. I'm
No.
sure I will say it probably has contributed to some degree to like my ability to function in society as an adult.
Call yourself a self-proclaimed shit disturber. But what kind of student were you growing up? Were you like pretty involved, or were you on the outskirts? Like, tell us about that.
Oh, that's such an interesting question. Um, you know what? I would say like I don't think academically I wasn't like a really great student. Ever. Like I think there was subjects I was far more attuned to like the arts and creativity. So I was someone who always did really great in music and band and drama and even sort of more like language arts classes and even social studies and like those type of classes, not great in the math and sciences. But I would say then as I went on into my post-secondary degree and studying business and starting to see math as a more practical, like when you start to do math and its budgets and its money, it makes more sense than like calculus and I don't know, like angles of a triangle.
yeah,
Sure. That has its place. Don't get me wrong. We want our engineers to know that. We just don't need our business people to know that. So I wouldn't say I was really the most solid student, honestly, growing up, but I was definitely social and I was a girl who had lots of friends and went out and did lots. And I read something recently, I think on LinkedIn, and it talked about like, those kids in high school who like they could talk to any of the groups in school. Like there's the jocks and there's the music
hmm
kids and there's the like goth kids and there's the like, I don't know, the ones that are out smoking in the parking lot. And like it was something to the effect of like those are the ones to watch in the future. And like I would say I definitely had some of that in me where I could kind of go and talk to like the hockey player boys and then talk to the music kids. And then I grew up in a community that had a really large Indigenous population. And I had some Indigenous friends and I could go hang out with them and eat bannock and go to a powwow. Like I kind of lived in a bunch of worlds. I had my core group, but I definitely had that like work the room kind of mentality, even in high school, I would say.
And so you take off, you go to Saskatchewan for school. What did you take?
Business.
Business, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually started out, okay, when you're in high school and you do those aptitude tests and it's like, what should you be when you grow up? Um, my aptitude test said I should either be a funeral home director, which is so weird for a high school kid,
Interesting.
or a radio DJ. And so originally I was like, I'm going to be a radio DJ. That's what I'm going to do. That was short-lived because I kind of realized like doesn't pay great and awful work hours. And also, even in the late 1990s, I was like, have a feeling radio might not have a great future. Like that might not be the way of the future. And so I actually was going to switch to education. And then I had worked in a recording studio and for a really small indie label for a couple of months and was like really enjoying that work. And I was really like, it was a small business, it was an entrepreneurial thing. And I kind of was like, I'm going to just totally switch gears. I'm going to do a business degree and I'm going to work in the music industry. Never worked in the music industry after that, but I got the business degree.
Cool. Yeah. And why Saskatchewan for school? Did you look at any other options? Uh, just like you wanted to go to business, and that seemed like a good program to get into.
You know what, for me, it was like growing up in this small community that is like 20 minutes away from the Saskatchewan border in Manitoba. You're literally at this spot where you're almost exactly equal distance from Winnipeg and Regina. And so what I found was when I graduated, and actually then also some folks going south of the border to Minot. And what I found was when I graduated, a lot of my friends and my cohort that I graduated with were going to Winnipeg. And it was kind of one of those breakout moments where it was like, I want to go a different direction. Like I want to go somewhere where I have to like not know anybody and reinvent myself and figure things out myself. And like, so that's really what pushed me. So it wasn't the school, it wasn't the program. I don't think even, I don't know, like this is sort of pre-internet, right? Like 1997. And so it wasn't like you had the same resources to really even research the schools and compare them. And so for
100%.
me, it was really just, I just want to go somewhere that not everyone I know is going.
It
That's
seemed,
smart, and that's very intentional.
yeah, it seemed to work out well because you mentioned you met your future husband there as well, right?
I did. Yeah, it was actually, he wasn't actually at school. He was at school in Ontario. It was, yeah, we crossed paths anyway. And so, yeah, it worked out the way it was supposed to.
Hear the story. How did you guys meet?
Well, because I was working for this recording studio and indie label, and he came home for the summer and he was going to school in Waterloo, in Ontario. And then he was working for the studio. So that we actually met kind of in the summer in the music industry. And we both thought, oh, yeah, we're going to work in the music industry and it's going to be so cool. He's a lawyer now. I am a nonprofit leader, like clearly not the path that we ended up on, but that's how we met and in that environment, which is so funny. And it feels like a million years ago because I was like, my early 20s and we'd go to rock concerts and I was booking bands and it was like that. It's so funny to me to think about now.
That's
Well,
awesome.
what a cool way to like actually connect
Yeah.
outside of like something like that, but actually have mutual interests like that as well too. And
Yeah.
that's really what creates an amazing partnership is those shared values, right? So, do you still get out to like live music now and stuff like that? Is that a big part
Well,
of your life?
I don't know. I mean, you guys have kids for sure. Gilbert, do you have kids as well?
I
You
don't.
just
Yeah.
you just look disheveled and
No, because you talked about soccer.
yeah. Sleep
It's like
deprived.
there's something that happens as soon as you like it's not so much as soon as you have kids. It's once your kids are like school age and they start to do after school activities. Like there's a period of about 10 years from like kindergarten until they can drive themselves that like your life is not your own. And
Mhm.
I'm in that phase of life right now where it's like you get up in the morning, you get them to school, you get home from work, you got to make lunch for tomorrow, you got to get them to hockey, you got to get them to piano lessons, you got to get them to dance, you got to get them to soccer, whatever it is. And then you do it all over again the next day. So by the time it's Friday night, first of all, you've probably got a hockey game or soccer game or dance recital or something on the weekend, and you're exhausted. Like when I get home on a Friday night, I'm not like, gee, are there any good bands in town? I am like, how early can I get my kids to bed so that I can go to sleep?
Sure. That
Because
gives
I'm
you so much to look forward to. It's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I was at a pre-Stampede party a couple weeks ago, and there was a really good band, and I was like, oh, I miss this. So I am looking forward to, I will say that's probably the most live music I consume in my entire year is during the 10 days of Stampede. So I do love it.
Yeah, Stampede is coming up. For some reason, that first Thursday, I think I have like four event invites or something like that. It just seems completely stacked, um,
Yeah.
and then a little bit more spread out thereafter. So
It's funny. It feels like there's certain days that are like the hot day for like events. I feel like the first Thursday because everyone wants to be first out of the gate. And then I have another day, I want to say it's either the Tuesday or Wednesday where I'm like, it's like quadruple stacked. I'm like, well, that'll be fun. That'll be a fun day. I'll just go party hopping. It's like bar hopping when you were a kid, right? That'll be great.
100%. Yeah. Uh, where do we leave off? I guess you were in school, you meet your future husband, and then this starts off the whole, uh, I guess, Canada and a bit of US world tour.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, the US thing. So my husband has dual citizenship because his mom's American. And we went and spent some time down in the States because he actually worked in the music industry down there. And so that we lived in Phoenix and we did that for a bit. And truthfully, because he is an American citizen, I had to go through a different immigration process than if he had been there on a work visa. And that process is actually a bit more strenuous, and especially because this was just post 9/11. So there was a lot of legislation around anti-terrorism and immigration and such. And so we were down there for about a year and a half. And I was just had graduated from university, basically. I'm sort of 24, 25 years old and not using my degree and not working and like self-admittedly, like probably a bit type A. So like I was literally like this cannot go on. Like my life is passing me by. In retrospect, now at 46, if somebody said, like, you can move to Phoenix where it never rains and it never snows and like sit by the pool and peel oranges for the little Mexican kids who are probably in the country illegally and just do nothing all day, like sign me up. But at 24, 25, I was like, we got to go back to Canada. Like I can't. And so we moved to Toronto and I actually landed in with a Canadian retailer and I worked with a women's clothing company called Jacob Clothing, which no longer exists as many Canadian retailers have struggled in the last 2 decades. And I started out as a store manager and quickly worked my way up to the district manager of their largest retailing district. So I sort of managed all of the Southwestern Ontario region, Toronto, Niagara, Waterloo, London, Ontario. And I did that for about 3 years. My husband went to law school. We landed in London, Ontario. And that's when I actually jumped into the nonprofit sector and fell in love. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, like walk us through that because like you have such a huge responsibility, and you go from like the retail world to a nonprofit. Like, what was that transition like? And where did you land?
Yeah, it was really interesting. So because the district that I was managing encompassed all of Southwestern Ontario, when my husband wanted to go to law school and we relocated, I was able to keep that district. But what I found was then I became a highway warrior. And for anyone who's lived and driven in Ontario, especially on the 401 on a day-to-day basis, it's like it feels like a death trap every day. And so that just wasn't going to be sustainable for me. And my husband happened to hear of an organization that was just getting started in Canada called International Justice Mission. And this is a charity that had been started in Washington, D.C. by a Harvard-trained lawyer who had worked for the U.S. government in the Department of Defense, had been seconded by the United Nations to investigate the Rwandan genocides. And essentially, he came through that experience a changed man. And what he really identified was that in so many of these developing countries, there are laws that prevent many of the human rights atrocities that exist. But what there isn't is a good legal system to prosecute. There isn't precedent. There's not only injustice, but often corruption within the justice systems. And so he set out to start a charitable organization that would work with a combination of legal professionals and justice professionals and investigators who were either, a combination of American and state born and from the jurisdiction that they were working in, and to work on legal reform so that, especially when you're rescuing victims of issues like forced prostitution and sex slavery, you can go in and rescue 15 girls from a situation like that, and all that guy's going to do is go find 15 more. And so to make sure that there's actually justice that involves prosecution and a deterrent for the perpetrators. And so this organization had existed for sort of 2 or 3 years in the US. They had just boomed. And like this is pre like Jeffrey Epstein, Ashton Kutcher, any of this narrative on like specifically forced prostitution and sex slavery. Like this is 2004, 2005. People weren't talking about this then the way that we do now, right? And so in Canada, there was a group of individuals who basically came together as a board of directors and said, we want to start this in Canada. Our former Premier Jason Kenney was one of those individuals. There's a number of other really notable folks who were on that board, and essentially they hired 2 or 3 of us and just said like, hey, like, see what you can do. So I jumped into the nonprofit sector, having to incorporate, having to get charitable registration through the CRA, having to go through all of the anti-terrorism legislation and paperwork because we were sending money overseas for legal work. So that goes through a lot of scrutiny. And literally having this sort of little base pocket of funding that was like, if you can't make this work in a year, you're done. And so having to do that fundraising to make sure that we would have a job beyond the year that was already funded. And you know what, by the end of the first year, and I will say, I think when there's certain issues in society that when you talk to people and you talk about children in brothels in Cambodia, like people are like, okay, how much do you need? Like there's just certain issues, social issues like that people are like, open their wallets and they're just like, take my money. And so by the end of the first year, we had raised $500,000. And through the 3 years that my husband was in law school, I worked with this organization. And when I left at the 3-year mark, we were at a $5 million a year budget. I don't know, like the last time I looked, I think they were raising between 12 and 15 million a year. So like it's pretty phenomenal. It's so cool because I got the opportunity to be part of a charity startup. But usually people who do that, it's like their idea. And so there's like kind of founder syndrome and all that stuff that goes with that. And for me, it was still just a job. Like it wasn't my charity, but I got all of the lessons that I got to learn along the way by being part of a startup.
No, that's amazing. That, is in like experience that is really hard to come by. And especially kind of, fairly early on in your career to be able to do all the things and organizational setup, charitable status, all that stuff. It's like, it just kind of arms you with the tactical details that go a long way in the future, right?
Yeah, like I feel like there's things that like I would say I kind of joke sometimes like I kind of did a nonprofit hat trick because I got to do a startup, and then when we moved to Alberta, I started as a director of fund development with a charity, and after 6 years, I moved into the CEO role. So I've done an internal promotion. And then I came here to the Calgary Food Bank 2 years ago as an external CEO hire. So I've done the startup, the internal promotion, and the external. And every step of the way, it's different challenges and different lessons learned. But I will say some of the fundamental, like actually knowing how to set up a charity, when you jump into a 43-year-old charity like the Calgary Food Bank, it's really helpful to understand how things might have been set up at the beginning and why, because I've actually been through that, where I don't think there's a lot of people who have had the benefit of having gone through that.
100%. And yeah, so how did this whole opportunity come to be?
Well, my husband was in law school. He was a first-year law student at the time, and the organization was just getting started. And because it was really an organization that had these legal roots, they were going to law schools. The board was going to law schools and talking about, we're going to start this charity. We're going to be hiring people, and this is what it's going to look like. And so my husband came home and was like, this is really amazing. Look at this work they're doing. And they're going to, judicial reform and all these things that lawyers love. And I looked at the website and I saw that they were looking for someone with more of a like business or business development background. More on the fundraising side, and also to do some of more the business work, like to do the incorporation and some of that. And I thought, I think I can. I don't know any of that, but I think I could figure it out. And I guess I convinced them that I could figure it out. So
yeah. So I guess after your husband finishes law school, you guys decide that London, Ontario is not the forever home. And where did you go from there and why?
So I might anyone who's gone through law school or knows someone who has, you finish your 3 years of law school and then you've still got to do your bar, you've got to do your exam. And in Alberta, we have something called CPLED where it's like a learning program they have to do, and you have to article. So you have to work somewhere for a year under someone's guidance. And so my husband's articling position was here in Alberta, and he had intentionally sought out articling opportunities in Western Canada because this is where our families were. And actually, I was expecting our first child at the time. So the timing was good that it was like, those of you who have children, like it's nice to be closer to family. And I mean, the reality is my folks were in Manitoba and his were in Saskatchewan. So Calgary still wasn't, grandma and grandpa weren't babysitting, but they were at least within a day's drive. And so those were kind of some of the factors that really drove us to come back west. And then I took the year, I did a bit of contract work for International Justice Mission while I was on maternity leave and still helped those folks out. And then when the maternity leave was coming to an end, I knew I wanted to stay in the nonprofit sector. I'd had this incredible experience with this international organization. It was funding across the country, but then the work that we were actually doing was happening internationally overseas. And there can sometimes be like a disconnect from the cause when you're not there. And, we would literally have these live chat streams, and when like raids were happening of brothels and things, like the organization did an incredible job of making you feel like you knew what was going on with those missions. But at the end of the day, when you don't have a facility you can tour a donor through, you don't have that same connectivity to the cause, you don't get to see it. I wanted that. And so I really focused on applying for jobs with local charities, Ronald McDonald House, STARS. I believe it or not, I actually applied at the Calgary Food Bank. I can remember being interviewed by my predecessor in the front office at our main warehouse. Like, it's so wild. Like, I can literally remember that. And junior achievement, and had some different opportunities and job offers. And at the end of the day, I completely made my decision based on the people who interviewed me, and just really felt like I'm still growing in this journey. I was only sort of 3.5, 4 years into my experience in the nonprofit sector, and I wanted to work with people that I really thought would be able to grow me and my career. And so that's where I landed. And I worked there for 6 years. I worked my way from sort of director of development to director of development operations, and then ultimately CEO. And so did 6 years in fund development and operations, and then 7 years as CEO there.
And which is the organization that you ended up choosing?
It's called Junior Achievement. So it's an organization that works with youth in school systems and after school programming, teaching financial literacy and a lot of like free market entrepreneurship and business skills. And so I would be the first to say when I went there, I wasn't like, oh, this is so important. Like, I was like, I like these people. I think this is going to really, like, these are going to be people that are going to help grow my career, and I'm going to learn a lot, and I'll do this for a few years and then I'll move on. I will say now, as a parent who's got kids in our school system and who sees what's happening in our society with debt and opportunity, and people not seizing opportunity when it comes to entrepreneurship and business ownership, I actually think that an organization like Junior Achievement has never been more important than it is today. Like, the level of consumer debt in our country is mind-blowing, and people need to start to understand what that means for their long-term financial well-being. And ultimately, your financial well-being ties into your physical and mental well-being. And so I really fell in love with the organization through the time that I was there.
Yeah, 100%.
Actually, I went to JA as well too.
Did
So
you in high
yeah,
school?
I was in high school. I think it was in grade 10, and I remember learning. I had to launch my first business.
Okay,
And
what was your thing? What
yeah,
did you do?
oh, it's so funny. It was like a group thing, but we ended up like selling candles or something like
Classic.
that.
So
Yeah,
I love this because, like, there's a few. So Danielle Smith, our premier, did Junior Achievement in Calgary when she was in high school. And her product this was like in the 80s, and pet rocks were like a thing. And so
Mhm.
they sold pet rocks, but they didn't actually go out and get rocks. They just like baked hard lumps of dough, I think. And they called them one lumpy or two. So that's kind of funny. And then one of my favorites also, I don't know if you guys, do you know Mark Blackwell? He was the chair of OSIF.
Yeah.
So Mark, who I know quite well, he did Junior Achievement all through high school. And we have amazing pictures of him when he was like 16 years old with like frosted tips, like speaking at a big gala. They did
Amazing.
they did like this lip gloss and they made it like in someone's house with like their mom's like crock pot or something. But the person whose crock pot they used had like made some like really spicy food in that crock pot and it had not been like adequately washed or something. So they like made this like lip balm that like literally people were crying when they put it on because it burned their lips so bad. And so like I love when I run into people in the wild and they're like, I did junior achievement. And then you hear these amazing stories. But like it's like it doesn't matter what you sold. It doesn't matter what the service was or whatever, but like the learning that happens along the way of like how to work as a team, dealing with HR issues, how to sell a product, how to talk to strangers and be like, will you buy our lip gloss? Like, I know I want my kids to do it. Like, it's a pretty great program.
I remember it being amazing. Like I had to take the train downtown, and it was just like every Thursday for like months or something like that. But I remember it being really cool. And I remember walking away being like, okay, we actually made a legit business out of this,
Yeah.
and it does equip you with a lot of skills. And actually, I work with the board now. Struggle is your success, and
Oh, with Moose,
yeah,
right?
yeah, Moose, yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love Moose.
Yeah. So you know all about his program, but teaching entrepreneurial skills to at-risk youth
Yeah.
is such an incredible skill set to provide to future leaders or people that haven't had the opportunity to do it before. It's like it can really take you anywhere once you have those skills.
Yeah, there's a really amazing story. Actually, there's a girl out of Calgary, and she would be a little bit younger than me. Like she'd probably be in her late 30s. And she did junior achievement here in Calgary. And she ended up going to Harvard. And basically, she got into Harvard because her entrance essay was about growing up in a single parent household, not having a lot of money, her experience with junior achievement, and like learning and understanding what business was all about. Long story short, she did her undergraduate degree. She went on to do her master's degree, and her master's thesis, like basically her project was she worked in the prison system in Boston, and she basically took junior achievement programming and revamped it to teach entrepreneurial skills to prison inmates because she herself was like no one's more entrepreneurial than a prisoner, like hands down. And so
Hmm.
basically teaching them entrepreneurship skills so that when they would exit the prison system, because especially in the US where there's not even as much legislation around hiring practice and human rights violations, it's really hard for ex-prisoners to get employed. So their best bet at income is entrepreneurship. And so they would work with these prisoners to essentially train them to be entrepreneurs when they left the prison system. And her statistics on how much that work curbed recidivism rates, that like there was the occurrence of relapse and going back into the prison system among the inmates that she taught entrepreneurial skills to was so much lower. And like I just think like what an amazing testimony to like the value of that type of knowledge, whether it's with young people or whether it's with people in the prison system, or honestly, if it's just grown-ups, and whether it's you become an entrepreneur or you just become an entrepreneurial thinker, there's just so much value in having that kind of creativity in society.
100%. No, that's awesome. That's great. And then has that program continued on, or has it been? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, her story's phenomenal because she went on. I mean, that program has continued on as a nonprofit organization and went on to exist without her because she then went on to do her PhD at Oxford, where she was actually hired by the government in England to do the same thing, but specifically with youth in incarceration in England. So, I mean, just her story is like you could do a whole series of podcasts on Bailey Aaron, but I just think it's just fascinating to see the data and the statistics that came out of that work when you look at what that does to people when you teach them those skills.
Amazing.
Yeah,
The
now
level
I'm
of
here.
confidence,
Now I'm
yeah.
at the food bank.
Yeah, I mean, like talk about the like your day to day, and so you've been at the food bank now for a few years, right?
2 and a bit. Yeah.
Okay, and so how did
Wow.
that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, I went from being CEO at Junior Achievement. I've been there, I mean, in total just over 13 years, and I just had the itch. Like I was like, I think it's time for something new. And I saw a newspaper article in October of 2022 stating that James McCara, who's my predecessor, was retiring and moving on from the food bank. And I'd kind of kicked the tires on a few other opportunities over the year before that, kind of looking for what my next move was and knowing I wanted to stay in the nonprofit sector, but I wasn't sure where. And I'll be honest with you, I saw that newspaper article. The job hadn't even been posted yet, and like I'm not super I'm not super woo-woo, but like in my like I just think in my being, I was like, that's it. That's my job. And I remember kind of saying to my husband, like, I think that might be my next move. And within days, I had received a call from the search firm that was doing the executive search for the position and went through that process. And it's interesting because over the years I'd kind of kicked tires on a few different jobs, but it'd never been something that I really wanted. And it had been 13 years since I'd really been looking for a job. And like, I really wanted this job, like, really wanted it. And it was actually like so emotionally draining to even just go through that process because I actually really wanted it. It wasn't like, whatever. And I remember I went through like multiple interviews, and the final interview, I had to come and I had to do this presentation to the board. And it was going to be like, what are you going to do your first 90 days? And so I had about a week and a half, about 10 days to put this all together. And I read the book First 90 Days, and I was reading all these HBR articles and Forbes articles, and I got everything together. And then I remember like I'd had this slide deck and I looked at it and I was like, honestly, I was like, the content is great, but like I am not a designer. I was like, this looks like garbage. Like this looks like shit. So I remember going on like Fiverr at like midnight on a Saturday, and I had the interview on a Monday and being like, I've got to find somebody that I can pay to make this slide deck look good in the next 24 hours. And so I literally went on Fiverr. I don't think my board knows this because they just think I made this beautiful slide deck. And it was all like Calgary Food Bank branded. And I literally went on Fiverr and I paid someone in New York like $250 to make my slide deck look good.
Amazing.
Yeah. And yeah, I just like I wanted it so bad though. I was like, no, I will put money into this. That's how bad I want this job.
No, that's amazing. And it's really interesting to kind of hear about this experience and what you went through, because I actually sit on a board of a not-for-profit Alberta Women Entrepreneurs, and we're undergoing a leadership transition as well. So this Friday, we're actually interviewing for candidates for the CEO role. So it's kind of interesting to see talk to someone that's actually been through that process, and how, and and how you were like so like wanting the position and all the things that you did to prepare yourself, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's an interesting process. And I will say, I'm sure every board does it differently. Like my first interview was just with the firm. My second interview was with like a panel of the board. And so there was like three or four people. But like one thing I found interesting was it was like there's three or four people, but only one really talked. And so then for me, even as a candidate, I left kind of being like, I literally don't know what any of the other ones were thinking. I don't know what they're like. I couldn't get their personalities. And then the final interview, there was an interview and the presentation. All of the board was invited. They didn't all attend, but talk about intimidating, basically having your entire potential future board. And I've never met any of these people. And I remember because my board chair now, who I've now been a CEO in the nonprofit sector for 10 years. I've had numerous board chairs and I've had some amazing board chairs, but I am going to say like this guy takes the cake. Like he is the best board chair. And he sat in that meeting. He's a businessman and he's an entrepreneur and he has just incredible credential. And he has this look, that look you get where the one eyebrow goes up. And he sat there through my entire interview with this one eyebrow up. And I just thought that guy hates me. He'd like, I was just like, he hates me. And he asked a few questions. And then when my interview was over and I went to leave, he went to go down the elevator at the same time as me and was kind of like, and I was like, oh no, that's okay. I have to go back and get like, I didn't even want to ride in the elevator with him because I thought he hated me. And now he tells me, he's like, when you left the room, I was like, if the food bank doesn't hire her, I will. But I was like, he hates me. He hates me. I was like, I'm too scared to ride in an elevator with him.
That's funny. Well, that's congratulations though.
Yeah.
And 2 years plus in, like
Yeah.
how has it been Was there any surprises in terms of like your perception versus reality? And where are you guys now? You know, inevitably, I've heard you speak before, and inevitably, just given what's happened with inflation and all the things, population growth, like the need is greater than ever, right?
Yeah, like my first day on the job was actually a Sunday, March 19th. And the reason it was a Sunday was because the board had already pre-booked and pre-scheduled a full day strategic planning meeting on Sunday, March 19th. And so I walked into that I'm like, I literally haven't even been in this building before. I don't know where the light switches are, but sure, let's plan the strategy. And the big thing that came out of that meeting was, we had the rest of the leadership team there, and what came out of that was that I was walking into an emergency food support program that had a 21-day wait time. We at that time were serving 400 households a day, and we had a 21-day wait time. And so the board, the mandate was just, you got to figure this out. And in a way, I actually think that was a wonderful gift for me, because it made it, rather than coming in on my first day and kind of being like, what are my priorities? What do I need to do? Like, where should I dig in? Where should I came in then on Monday and was like, hey, leadership team, we need a meeting. We've got a 21-day wait time. What are the bottlenecks? How are we clearing this out? How can we ramp up distribution? And that really became the biggest focus of my first 3 months. And so literally from sort of late March through till about the end of July, we went from serving 400 households a day to 750. And we just had to keep stress testing our systems and making changes and moving things around and repainting the parking lot and just constantly maneuvering. And we created huge dashboards on like, okay, we've got to measure like, is our volunteer show rate dropping? Are we dealing with issues of staff now not showing up? Are we having inventory challenges? But it really gave something for me to sink my teeth into. And it really gave me an incredible initiative for evaluation of the leadership team that I inherited, and like, how do they rise to the challenge, and who's giving pushback, and who's willing to change, and who's willing to take on a challenge. And so it certainly wasn't intentional on the board's part. They didn't know either until we showed up in that room for that strategy session. But for me, it actually was a real gift that I had that opportunity to really address a big problem right away early in my tenure.
Experience. And what, like you called it a gift, what an opportunity to walk in there and have a tangible goal or a tangible project to start working on right away. And like I think with you coming in there with that mindset of like, I'm going to evaluate everyone that's here now as well too, and see when push comes to shove who comes and who comes swinging. So that's amazing. Like, what did you learn about yourself throughout that process?
Oh man, like the last 2 years, like you guys, I would write a book, but you'd have to sign an NDA to read it. Like it's, I have learned so much. And like, I think, if there's one thing that I'll be honest that I'm going to have to just keep learning over and over again. And I know, like a couple of weeks ago, I sat on a panel with CEO of Calgary Sports and Entertainment Group and the CAO of Trans Mountain Pipeline. And I just kept saying to my friends, like, I have so much imposter syndrome. I cannot believe I'm on a panel with these two people. And like that has been the entire last 2.5 years of my life, is just imposter syndrome. Like, I'm in over my head. I shouldn't be doing this. But so many times where I've questioned my own judgment, or I've thought I need to go left. And then I ask people and they say, no, 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 go right. And we go right and then we go left. And I've really learned that, I think, through my experiences that I've had and the incredible opportunities I've had and the amazing people I've been able to surround myself with to learn from and to phone a friend option and all of those things, I actually have a lot of intuition that is on the mark with business decisions, and particularly when it comes to the social sector and the nonprofit sector. And I'm really every day having to learn to trust that the experience that brought me here is the experience I need to lean on to get me through all the decisions that I make on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, 100%. I can't remember what book that was, but they were talking about like how like there's like these like radar technicians, and like just the blinking, the nuance of it, they can tell the difference between if it's like a plane or like a missile or something like that, and it's like, you know, indistinguishable from like the naked eye. But then it's just like that intuition, like based off of years of experience, that you just know things that you can't necessarily articulate. It's like that sixth sense that you develop just, you know, doing all the things that you've done, right?
Yeah, and I think like part of the reason I maybe like I'm trying to get more comfortable with it, but I'm still like I'm a pretty quantitative person. Like I've got a business degree and then my master's degree is in public policy economics. So like I'm like a pretty numbers based kind of person. And so then when I have like when someone says, "Well, what should we do?" and my answer is like, "Well, my gut tells me." And it's not, "Well, I've analyzed the data." Da, da, da. Like I always feel a little hokey pokey. Like it's like, okay, your gut tells you. Like, no, but like why? Like, and that's where sometimes, but it's that like to the naked eye, it's indistinguishable. But I have 20 plus years of experience in this sector, and that has led to a place where, well, it is a gut check. It's based in something. It's based in some sort of lived experience.
100%.
Okay, I want to know what the book is now, so you're going to have to look that up later.
This episode is brought to you by Bloom Benefits Group. Bloom Benefits is disrupting employee benefits by rethinking the status quo. They provide exceptional customer service while saving you money. Bloom offers group benefits and retirement products, health and wellness accounts, executive benefits, life insurance, and disability and critical illness. Available to companies across Canada, Bloom helps clients save money without interrupting current plans. Check them out at bluebenefits.ca.
Young professionals, families, and entrepreneurs. What makes Zelos Investment Counsel different? Our independence, client focus, and access. Zelos Investment Counsel is independent from banks and brokerages, which ensures clients' best interests are served without corporate conflicts. We are fiduciary portfolio managers with a duty to clients that doesn't exist in the brokerage model. At Zelos Investment Counsel, we exist to care for our clients, and every day we strive to help our clients reach their goals. We provide our clients with access to institutional investment managers and sector specialists through our proprietary investment structure. For more information, book your no obligation meeting today at zelosglobal.com. That's www.zelosglobal.com.
Attention all car owners. Is the winter weather turning your beloved ride into a rusty relic? Fear not, because we've got the solution you've been dreaming of: Crown Rust Protection. Picture this: your car defying the elements, standing strong against rust like a knight in shining armor. Crown Rust Protection is not just a shield, it's an investment in the longevity and resale value of your vehicle. Don't let rust take the wheel. Book your Crown Rust Protection treatment today and let your car embrace its inner superhero. Call now at 403-291-1951 or book your appointment at www.krown.com. Our skilled technicians are ready to give your car the VIP treatment it deserves. Crown Rust Protection, because your car deserves to age like fine wine, not rusty vinegar.
Today's episode is brought to you by Motive, a leading venture builder with over a decade of experience helping corporates and startups build, launch, and scale successful business ventures. Whether you're looking to innovate your business model, develop a game-changing product, or craft a winning go-to-market strategy, Motive is with you every step of the way. Their proven venture building process and technologies help reduce risks and accelerate time to market. Innovation is everywhere. Let's harness it together. Visit motive.digital to learn more. That's Motive spelled M-O-T-I-V.
It needs to go from different organizations, and they've all been pretty impactful. But I'm curious on how you make decisions in general. Do you have a matrix that kind of, being a qualitative or quantitative person, that goes through like your mind when something new enters the orbit?
Oh, it depends on what it is. Like we're going through a lot right now. We are opening our first ever branch location. So 43 years the Calgary Food Bank has existed. And I call it my 43-year-old startup because when you take over from a 23-year CEO, food comes in, food goes out. People have been fed by the Calgary Food Bank for 43 years. But in terms of business systems, we had some work to do. And so when it comes to making decisions and we're opening branches and we're figuring things out, like there's things that I just don't know. But I will say, I think if there's one thing that I've done okay at over my career, it is shamelessly collecting people who are smarter than me. And so if I know somebody who knows something about commercial retail construction and I'm wondering how much should it cost me per square foot for a reno, I phone a friend. Hey, what do you think this should cost me? Who do you know who could do this? Do you know someone who could do this for cheaper? Do you know someone who could do this for free? So that, the phone a friend option and leaning on the network that I have is huge. And I will say, I often say I should get a shirt printed that says Calgary freaking Food Bank because I think our community wants to see us succeed and they want to help us. And so sometimes, even if it's not someone who's really in my network, but they're in our city and I think they care and I think they have some knowledge or expertise that could help me. I put on my big girl pants that day and I will call a total stranger and say, it's Melissa from the Calgary Food Bank, and I'm wondering if you would have a few minutes to help me out. I'm trying to figure out what I should do with XYZ, and I know you know more about this than I do. And I have yet to have somebody say, no, I don't have time to help the Calgary Food Bank. So I phone a friend. That's what I do.
Yeah. I've heard like we just have like a exceptional culture around not-for-profit community service, and that's fairly unique in some ways.
Yeah.
But and obviously, the Calgary Food Bank is just an organization that has been around for a long time. Everyone knows the organization and what it does. So that's obviously helpful in terms of opening doors and getting your phone calls answered, right?
It is. And I mean, as someone who's lived in a few different communities across our country, like I've lived in 4 provinces and a state, and I've worked in many different cities, like there is more of a like neighbors helping neighbors kind of culture in Calgary. And then I think further to that, like, were you guys ever part of the rainforest stuff that like Brad Zumwalt and Terry, like back in like pre-COVID days? And like I was like in the earlier days of the rainforest crew, like when it was still in Brad's office and there was maybe 14 or 15 of us sitting around the board table in Brad's office. And part of the rainforest culture was, and I know it was more around the ecosystem of tech and tech startup, but part of the contract, the social contract in the rainforest group was basically making a social commitment to helping each other. That like if Gilbert reaches out and says, Melissa, could I buy you a coffee and could I just pick your brain for 30 minutes because I'm going to do a startup on food reclamation? That I basically am signing this contract to be part of the rainforest community and make a commitment that I'm going to make 30 minutes for you and I'm going to help you with that. And I know that the rainforest, like with the advent of platform, I think there's still a provincial rainforest kind of community. I think the Calgary community has kind of dissipated a bit, but I actually think, and I think that's probably about, I'm trying to do the math in my head. My daughter's 13. Like that was probably about 12 years ago that all really started. I actually really think that took hold in our community in ways that Brad and those early founders will never fully know, the way that they influenced the entire business ecosystem in Calgary to further entrench those values of like, we owe it to one another because at the end of the day, the rising tide lifts all boats. And if I take half an hour with you and you create an incredible startup in food reclamation, it's probably going to help me. And if you take half an hour with the next person who's doing a startup on something else, it all comes back around and maybe it's a bit sort of leading into karma and all of those ideas. But I think that it was already part of who we are as a city in Calgary. But I also think there was something really special about really articulating it through that time frame in the mid 2000s, sort of 2010 to 2015, where it was like, hey, this is going to be who we are as a city. And I hope that holds as we continue to grow and change as a city, that we don't lose that.
But I mean, I went to a couple of rainforest meetings, and funny enough, like when I went there out of a tech startup, and I was super young at the time and young into that firm, and someone told me to go. And what I loved about it was actually when I got there, funny enough, Brad was the one that introduced me to the group. and in the actual meeting, because you sit beside someone, they get to know you, and then all of a sudden it's like, all right, Rainforest members, stand up and talk about the person that you just met. And it happened to be Brad that introduces me. And I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. Okay. Like I've just met you. You're now introducing me
Big
on,
deal. And it's
yeah. I'm like, yeah. I
Brad.
was like, okay, this is pretty sweet. Like you're telling the entire like group about me, and it's making me feel welcome.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Would
everyone's
that
like
have
quite
been,
successful.
so would that have been in Kensington when it was at Brad's office still, or would that have been at Oddfellows downtown, like that old building downtown?
Yeah, because there's definitely probably about like 60 people in the room at that point.
Yeah.
And this was like in 2015, 2016. So I was at an
I know
accelerator
that.
program, and then we just got asked to go and kind of pitch who we were and whatever else. But yeah, that was a great program. And I remember the contract that they talked about in the beginning as well too. And I was like, this is great. And to Gilbert's point as well too, and to yours, Calgary's always been like that as well too. I feel like everyone here is like 2 degrees away. I've had no problem calling people and asking for a coffee and having conversations, and everybody's willing to help and pay it forward, which is so nice.
I remember when I was first made CEO at Junior Achievement, and I mean, charities do this thing where I'm like, I don't know that like CNN's not picking up the story who's the new Junior Achievement CEO in Calgary, but they do these press releases and they send notifications out to their donors. And the first phone call I got as the new president at Junior Achievement was from none other than J.R. Shaw himself. And he called to tell me there was a typo in my press release. And I was like, oh my God, the godfather of all like media in Canada is calling to be like, there's a typo in your press release. And then he's like, it says Melissa from. Where are you from? And then he laughs diabolically and hangs up the phone. Like it was like a 75 or 80-year-old man basically prank called me to make fun of me and then hung up. And then every time he saw me, he always made that joke. But it's like that's how like big city, small town Calgary was. That someone like J.R. Shaw would take the time to do that and just have a chuckle. It just I don't know that something like that would happen in Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. I think that's something that's really special about Calgary.
That's a cool story.
I mean, we're here now, and you've done all these amazing things. Where do you want to go? I know you've talked about some of the retail locations and things like that you want to build, and you're going to create some waves and do some amazing things. But when you look back, like when someone asks you what your purpose is, what would you say?
Oh man, that's so interesting. And I think like I said, I've worked in the nonprofit sector for a long time, and I think one of the amazing things about working in the nonprofit sector is, the whole Simon Sinek know your why. Like that's a non-issue. Like we're feeding people who can't feed their kids. Like we've got that. But for me personally, honestly, um, I don't feed people. My team feeds people. Our volunteers feed people. Our donors feed people. The legacy I want to leave in the career that I've had and the work I've done in the nonprofit sector is the next generation of nonprofit leaders. Like I am so passionate about developing my staff. I just had a young guy in here yesterday signing an updated contract because we're changing his role, and he's got a computer sciences degree. This time last year, he was driving a forklift. We are in the middle of massive systems changes. He's done Salesforce certifications. He's leaned in. He is stepping up in huge ways. And I'm telling you, like 3 years from now, this guy will have done such massive IT system transformation for us. Anybody in the city will be lucky to have him. And that's what I get excited about. Like, I literally get excited for him that I'm like, I'm so excited for you that you are getting this experience to grow your career. And like that's what like my mission isn't to make food accessible to everyone in our city. That's the food bank's mission. That's the mission of this incredible team of people that I get the privilege to work with, and these amazing volunteers who show up here every day. But my mission is to grow the people who work for me so that they can not only fulfill that mission, but like that they could go on to be the leaders of Alberta Women Entrepreneurs and Meals on Wheels and Junior Achievement and all of these other social serving agencies so that our community is really, really well taken care of well into the future.
Yeah, that's incredible. Um, I think that's a really special mission. But I guess like just being in the seat and training the next generation, contributing to that, like the not-for-profit sector is like very unique in a lot of ways, just given, resourcing, the centralization around society's like most dire and hardest problems to solve. What do you think are the characteristics of people that would thrive in not-for-profit opportunities and leadership opportunities in that sector?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I think like anything in society, there's kind of there's iterations. And I think there was a period in time where the number one criteria for success in the nonprofit sector was just you just got to care. Just show up and care and get it done. And I think where we're at in society now, like the Calgary Food Bank is a $70 million a year operation. We have 3 facilities, we have forklifts, we have a fleet of trucks, I have 110 staff, we've got occupational health and safety and insurance and cybersecurity and all these things. And so it now moves into a space of like you've got to care, but you've also got to bring some pretty sound business principles to the practice. And we need to make sure that we're setting these organizations up in a way that has some sustainability and viability into the future, just economically. I will say in my time in the nonprofit sector, I've seen folks who have made the jump from nonprofit to corporate and corporate to nonprofit. Um, Even with a $70 million budget, which is large in the scope of nonprofits in our city for sure, we're still operating on a shoestring. Like at the end of the day, it is, old sports euphemism, like you're going 110% all the time. And so you do have to have a degree of resilience and grit to work in an environment that's so dynamic and so fast paced and so under-resourced. So, it's not for the faint of heart.
100%. Yeah, 100%. Because I know that everyone is expected just to do more with less, right?
Always, every day, every year, like the growth that we've had in the food we're distributing is not equitable to the growth that we've had in demand. Like we've doubled the number of food hampers we're putting out the door in less than 2 years. Our budget far from doubled. Like our budget increase has been maybe 10% in 2 years, but our output has been 100%. So you figure it out. You just have to be really, really resourceful.
Earlier too about having a strong why really comes into play then as well too. Like if you want to join a nonprofit, be passionate about the cause that you're serving and find ways to add value, right? I love what you guys are doing. I love the organization. It's been around forever, like you said, and it's a staple here in Calgary. But thank you so much for coming on and being our guest and sharing your story and your wisdom and just like you have an amazing attitude and you tell your story so well. And we want to give you the floor and really just tell people what they can do to not only help you or the organization out, but also other ways that they can maybe connect with you.
In terms of how folks can help out, whether it's the Calgary Food Bank or any other charity in the city, I'm a real believer in time, talent, and treasure. And everyone in different stages of your life, sometimes you can give in different ways. I get it. I work full time. My husband works full time. We have 2 really active kids. Giving of my time right now is a really challenging thing for me. So I will give more of my resources than my time. But if you're older, you're retired, your kids are grown, you maybe can give more of your time, but you're paying for college. So maybe you can't give me money. But I'm a really big believer that I never want folks to think like, well, I can't really afford to give anything, so there's nothing I can do. There's so many different ways to get involved, whether it's at the Calgary Food Bank or any other charity. For us, if you go on our website, there's opportunities to volunteer, there's opportunities to give, there's opportunities to do third-party fundraisers. Maybe you don't feel like you can afford something, but maybe you're having a birthday party for your 50th, or you're having an anniversary party, or you're having a corporate party. There's ways that you can build community around giving back. And I just really encourage people. I think that's part of what's, the magic of our city is that we really, I think we saw this so greatly personified through the 2013 floods of like, just, we're in it together. And it's amazing how our city just does have that attitude. And, I just hope that we never lose that. I just really want our city to, as we grow and as we diversify, to just keep that, by community for community kind of mentality.
100%. Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was a fantastic story. I'm sure our listeners will enjoy it greatly. and really appreciate the time.
No, you know what? Thank you so much, you guys. It's always, these conversations, I like want to just like be like, where did you grow up? Tell me more about you. But it's also fun for me even just to reflect and look back, even just on the last 2 years here. I think that, we've come a long way in how we're serving the community. And like, I don't think I can overstate how phenomenal the team here is, the staff and the volunteers who come here every day. And I think anything's possible, but with this group of people putting their minds and their hard work to things.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Between Two Dots by Intention Media. This podcast is co-hosted by myself, Gilbert and Hafiz Mita. If you enjoyed this podcast, please rate and review wherever you listen.